I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, sound. I'll call the...
Chairman Carl Roth.
Here.
Member Ron Bedova.
Here.
Member Chris Leeds.
Here.
Okay, we have the minutes from 5/19/20. Any changes, or do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved from 5/19, and we have Mr. Mueller online, and let's open it up and see what he'd like to share with us tonight.
Mr. Mueller, can you hear us? Just one moment, Mr. Mueller. I'm just trying to get the sound in with you. Just give me a second.
Sure.
There we go.
All right, there we go.
Oh, that's much better.
Okay, go right ahead.
Oh, hey, thank you for allowing me to speak, and I appreciate your efforts to try to get our city back on track with regard to the waterfront. I do have a couple questions, and I was looking over the information that was provided in the agenda, one of which was a spreadsheet that seemed to have dollars and quantities and estimates. Wondered where that came from and how current that data is. And we need to look at getting authority to from the council to have this Port Authority lead the effort on any dredging. I'd like to see if somebody can make maybe a possible motion to move forward with something like that. Also, we need to look at partnering with the county to the extent necessary that we can increase and the funds available to do and expand some of the scope around the flooding and those kinds of areas. I know that Jack Mariano was looking at some of that. Perhaps you can elaborate if you had any conversation with him regarding the ability to pull other funds in. I also looked at your survey, the dredging questionnaire, and this is similar to the one that Mike and myself and Jack Mariano worked up for the 5 canals along Old Post, and I don't know if you're aware that went out, because that was a specific targeted mailing regarding the funding from SwiftMud to try to help those 5 canals on Old Post. One question I did have on yours, item 6, perhaps you can elaborate on that, what that means. I have no idea what you're asking for there. And how many areas is your access limited? Mark X, low tide 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 or more. I don't know what that means. I think it needs to be explained a little better. Other than that, I think it's a good start, and potentially we've got an effort going here on this side that could potentially, we need to partner with the county and try to let them possibly even lead this thing, because they've got more heads, more funds, and an opportunity to possibly do more with the funds available. I appreciate you guys' help trying to get this waterfront addressed, and I'll just sit back and listen. Appreciate it.
Hey Dave, this is Carl Roth. Just to give you some feedback on your questions, if the council will, if the board will indulge me here. The cost we had talked about last month, we had the last meeting, we had 3 canals that were proposed and there were dredging quotes. The other numbers are all based on the volumes of material that were supposed to be removed and an estimated cost of what it could potentially be to remove the material in those other channels. So it's purely an estimate. It was just to give us a Kentucky windage, if you will, on what particular channels could cost to dredge. As far as making sure that we try to move authority to PAB from City Council, that one would be nice, potentially, I think, I'm not sure yet, but we would definitely have to have some input from the community to the council to say, hey, the boards need to take a stronger role. I don't know if from the board standpoint we can do that. Our charge is really recommendations, which we've done traditionally, but to take a more aggressive role, if you will. We're not really empowered under the charter to do that, but not that that could not be changed based on what I know. County partnering, one of the things that we're going to talk about here, had an opportunity to talk with Commissioner Mariano, and we have some information tonight that I was going to share with the rest of the board on what we learned from that. But certainly one of the key things for our meeting tonight was to talk about who we could potentially partner with at not only Pasco County, but also at the state level, DEP, SWIFMUD, potentially Army Corps, based on some things here. And let's see, regarding the questionnaire, you were asking about item 6, the number of areas that limit your access. So what we were trying to do was get some clarity based on our discussion during the last meeting. So, for example, you're in channel 14. Can you get out from where you are in channel 14? Yes or no is the response for number 5. But then number 6, what our intent was to say, hey, do I bump ground in 1, 2, 20 locations as I'm getting out to deeper water? So that was the intent of question 6. And let's see, the last one, shoot, drawing a blank.
I believe it was, could we let the county actually take the lead?
Oh, yeah, as far as the county taking the lead, I guess when we get into this a little bit further this evening, I guess my personal belief is it'll be some type of cooperative effort, frankly. The city, the county, the SWIFMUD, whoever it happens to be, because there's a potential for multiple sources of funding, and generally those entities want some leverage over that funding. So my gut tells me it may be some type of cooperative effort going forward. Now maybe PAB could be the focal point for that, I'm not sure, but I think there'll be something, and that's just my editorial comment. And I guess what I'll do here is just see if there's any other things that Chris or Ron would like to add in that response.
No, I think you got it covered.
Okay. All right, so what we're going to do now is proceed to the other aspects of the meeting. I'll start because I had some takeaways from last one. I was supposed to reach out to Vince with the questionnaire and try to get that moving along. I have not had closure from Vince yet. So what I was going to do was confer with you gentlemen and see, on the approach to take, which you're most comfortable with, I was going to suggest following back up with Vince again, but then potentially getting a hold of Scott or Will or one of the other council to say, hey guys, we really need to get on the agenda. And now I could always show up at a council meeting and just say, just wanted to give you an update, but I wanted to get y'all's input as far as what you thought were most comfortable with. So with that, I will turn it over to Chris.
I think if you just show up, it doesn't look like that you would get recognized to give an update for Port Authority. So I think either trying to get on the agenda, either through Vince or through one of the council members, is probably the best approach. Okay. But with the situation with the city manager, I think maybe doing both in parallel might be the
Okay.
best way to go.
Okay. Ron?
Yeah, I agree. I think that,
Mike?
yes, I agree with Chris. I think we need to get it on the agenda for the next council meeting and maybe make a short presentation or let them know, because I don't know how much longer Vince is going to be here. I don't know if it's on his agenda to get this through, whereas I know the rest of the board, the council is there, and I'm sure they're interested in it.
Okay, that sounds good. So what I will do is take the initiative to not only follow up with Vince, but also reach out to one or more council members to get on the agenda. So to give them an update on all the things that we've really talked about that I've not been able to get on the agenda with. Okay. Okay, let's see. The only other thing, Jack Mariano, County Commissioner Jack Mariano reached out to me at the end of the week and gave me some information about some of the things that the county's looking to do on the Magnolia Valley dredging and the water outfall, and the potential to piggyback funding for that initiative as well as the dredging. SwiftMud's involved, and the county's certainly involved with that, and there's a high degree of interest on that. So what I was going to suggest is not to belabor this here in the front end, but as we get into the dredging piece on our other subjects, fold this in and have that conversation at that time.
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense?
Yep.
Okay. So that's all I had from general stuff. So Ron, do you have anything you'd like to bring up?
Nope.
One of our topics last time was the boat traffic on the river, and the no wake. We tabled the conversation about getting the police involved. I would really like to explore either a formal request along that line. So, number 2, sorry, okay, gotcha.
So with that lead, thank you, Mr. Straightman. The water safety discussion is what I was looking to do first, so we at least had time to do it and didn't get pushed with the dredging stuff. So I'd like to take at least 15 minutes or somewhere around that to have that discussion. And it just so happened today, I had a guy in about a 25-foot center console prating out, in, out, and in the river at about 35 miles an hour.
Wow.
With boats idling. Usually the boats idling were usually skiffs and whatnot. And matter of fact, this evening when I came in, there was a young mother with about a 3-year-old on a paddleboard in the middle of the river coming in. That would have been prime time with this reckless operator. So I happened to be out in the yard at that time, and after, going back and forth, like, what the heck is going on here? I called 911. And I said, hey, this guy is in the river. This is the description of the boat operator. And you can get him right now because he's not going anywhere. Well, I was referred over from 911 to Florida Fish and Wildlife, and they took the information, and I think that's about as far as it went. I did see Newport Richey police on the water a couple hours later, but I mean, this is, I think, classic of what we're most concerned
Absolutely.
about.
Yeah.
So with that lead in, I'm going to shift it over to Chris, since you were the straight man earlier, and lead us off.
I think that whether or not it's increased presence from the police boat on the water, or I did like the suggestion of having somebody get right out there on one of those points that sticks out. You could have a police car there hailing folks and just warning them to slow down. From a safety standpoint, not to mention the property damage you have, but just from a safety standpoint, there's so much more boat traffic in the last couple of months, since people have been stuck at home, than there has been before. I just think it's an urgent need. So my recommendation would be that we would make a formal request to council and the police department to up the presence.
Ronnie?
I think that because of trying to have the Marine Patrol or our water unit be out there, it's just too hard for them to do that. I suggest that the patrol officers during patrol, again, can sit on either side of the river. They can watch the river. They can take note of boats. If they're going out, they can look at FL numbers, okay? Make reports if they're heading back towards, if the people are heading back towards Nix Park, they can meet them over at Nix Park.
Yep.
A lot of it's going to be education. With this COVID-19, I've noticed a lot more boats, a lot more jet skis, a lot more water vehicles in the river. And I just think it's a lack of knowledge of what a no-wake is. You'll see 5 boats idling, and you'll see 1 boat just weaving in and out of them, passing and them going out. I would also like to see if we could get some kind of sign at the ramp at Nix Park that basically states that there is no wake zone from channel marker right off Nix Park all the way out to where it is on the corner. Basically no wake zone between here and there, a little diagram, and if they could either put the Florida statute or the fine for it, you know, if it said, for instance, $300 fine for speeding, at least they know that you're not supposed to do it and there is a fine.
Right.
Okay, and it's a warning, because there's just a lack of knowledge from people on the water, and it's only getting worse, it's not getting better.
Right. Yeah, it's every time I go out.
And if we, again, could get the police officer, Port Richey, any of them, Marine unit, to go over and talk to the shrimpers going out, that would help too, because I see they have, not all of them, but some of them have sped up. They always seem to be in a hurry going out, in a hurry coming in, when I don't know if they're on a time schedule or not. But it's just getting them to respect the river, again, the no-wake zones, and people's property and docks and boats that are on the river.
Yeah, I think the signage idea at Nix, and maybe we could work with Newport Richey as well to get the same sign
Maybe they could do it down at
Right.
the Main Street.
at Main Street. That way, you know, you get the whole areas, and I've seen it at other ramps where they'll show safety zones. Well, they'll have them marked out, so it's a graphic. Maybe if you can't read, at least you can understand the graphic aspect of it.
Yes.
So I think that's a really good idea. I think going back to your lack of knowledge statement, which I think is really key, because I've seen so many new boats. I mean, they are really shiny and pretty out there.
Yep.
And I think they got the keys and turned them on and
Off they
just
go.
going. And I don't know if there's anything that we could do, and maybe in the city publication, encourage them to go to Power Squadron Safety Course or something like that, just as a matter of course, or get those numbers on a sign at Nix if you're a new boater.
We might want to work with, because again, if it's only Port Richey, I think majority of the people that use that ramp and come out of the ramps, either Port Richey or Main Street, are not from Port Richey.
Yeah.
So maybe we could team up with Pasco County, okay, and somehow them get some kind of bulletins out, registered voters in the Pasco County area. They could send some kind of safety flyer to them, explaining from Main Street out and from Nix Park out what a no-wake zone is. And then if it's mailed to every registered voter in West Pasco, then you're getting the information right to the voters.
Right.
They register their vehicle, they're in West Pasco, they're going to use one of the 2 ramps, even Hudson. I'm sure they have problems up there, okay?
Sure.
It's an educational thing that we could partner with the county, because they know who the registered voters are in West Pasco.
Ron, do you know anybody in the tax office as far as dealing with vehicle registration or boat registrations?
I know Mike Fasano.
Mike, you know Mike?
Mm-hmm.
You think you might be able to give him a call and see what he thinks might be doable?
Yes, I'll try to reach out to him. and see if that's doable on his end. But
Right.
of course, the information would have to come from Pasco County.
Right.
They'd have to decide this is what they want to do.
What I'm thinking about is if we go to.
And when may we partner with Newport Richie too, so that you get
Right,
the
it's all
two
three.
cities and the county all on the same project, trying to get this information out there.
Well, what I'm thinking about is if we go to, say, a Jack, or we go to the council over at Newport Richie and say, we've already had discussions with Pasco County, they're able to do this if you guys are in agreement, kind of thing. So make it as easy as possible, if at all possible, practical. Chris, other thoughts?
No, I'm good.
I think this is a pretty good list of things that we can do. I think my question to you gentlemen is, how far do you want to take this? Do you want to put this together in some level of more formalized, here's recommendations, or here's what we think you should do, and taking that to council? It's kind of how much work do we want to do? And in the past, what I've found is you tend to get a little more traction if you can make it easy, but I don't want to be presumptuous here. I want to kind of say, okay, what do you guys think? What would you like?
No, let's do the legwork and make it easy for them to say, yes, let's do it.
Okay.
Um,
So,
I suggest that we, again, maybe at your, if you're going to get on the agenda
right,
for the questionnaire, you bring that up and say, basically, this is what we're thinking as a safety for not only Port Richey, Newport Richey, and Pasco County residents. This is what we would like to do and team up with the other two entities, Newport Richey and Pasco County. Do we have the authority to go forward and try to put some paperwork together
Okay.
and then
That I
reach
like.
out to,
Right. I like
Jack through the council and Newport Richey council members, Jeff Starkey, I know
Jeff
he's
Starkey
a
would be
voter.
easy to do.
And just run it by them and say, are you guys on board? And then we can work together, the three entities, to get this out there.
Yeah,
I like that.
recommended signage, what the education communication needs to be and all that.
Yeah.
no, I
Yep.
think that's good, because that way we can kind of pull people in sooner. Here's what's going on, and then maybe we can get some real traction. I think that's good.
Okay.
Okay. All right. One of the things we talked about early on was maybe trying to do some type of safety things for boaters, or maybe sponsor something maybe here that somebody from Power Squadron comes in and it's available, or we get some people coming in from Florida Fish and Wildlife or Pasco Marine Unit to basically give a talk about the types of things. We could treat it as an educational opportunity for us, but if we have people here, it becomes an educational opportunity for them as well. Just wanted to float that as something else on the safety.
I think
front.
that's a great idea, and I think we could piggyback off of what we're trying to do, whereas not only the flyer will give information, but it could also say, if you want to come to one of our safety programs, it will be this date, this time, at this entity, whether it's in Newport Richey has a place, Pasco County, or here in Port Richey. So give them the opportunity to actually come to and have either FWC, the Pasco County Marine Unit, Port Richey Marine Unit, or Newport Richey Marine Unit, and do it every so often, so that if they can't make one, they can come to another, because again, you have a lot of new people with boats, jet skis, and there's no education for them, and
Right.
maybe that would help too.
Right.
You know, two different places that I used to boat, the Coast Guard Auxiliary was there multiple times a year, and they would, you're not going to get a ticket or anything, but they would just offer to do an inspection. You know, do you have all the right safety equipment? Is your boat marked properly? Are you ready to go? Do you understand, right red? All of those things, and they would just stop and talk to you, and if you pass the inspection, you got a sticker that you had passed the inspection, which meant nothing, but it was just an
They,
educational thing.
they did that years ago at Nick's
Yeah.
Park. They would show up unannounced. They'd just
Yeah.
be there on one Saturday, and they would be there and ask, do you want to have a boat inspection? And they'd look, and if you passed, they gave you a little sticker. If you're missing something, they tell you right there what you're missing. But it's been a long time since we've had any kind of educational at all. I don't know of anything, I've never heard of anything in the past, say 10 years, between any of the county or the two cities, anything education-wise going towards boating and boating safety. So maybe it's just something we can start with this whole program between the three and have something every other month between the three departments. If one department did it twice a year, that's 6 times a year, you would have a class, a safety class for the public to come and learn about the rules.
Well,
Right.
under a certain
Safety.
age, you're supposed to have passed the motor safety course, right? Supposed to.
Yes, theoretically, if you're 31 or younger, you're an expert now.
Yeah.
I have yet to see that demonstrated, however.
My daughter's taken the course, and she at least knows, terminology and where to be and how to do it, so.
Maybe if we go and get these entities engaged around and agree to a safety program, this could be a logical additional piece as well, with maybe Coast Guard Auxiliary doing their safety checks, which is
Right.
what you're describing. And I have some friends that are at yacht clubs. They've just done that because they're opening their season. So I think maybe we can bundle all of these things together and really get a comprehensive piece, because safety, I think, is really key on the waters.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Okay. Anything else on this subject, or you think we've got enough once we get some council feedback on?
Yes.
Yep.
Good. All right, so let's move on to, well, let me ask a question. What we had on the agenda was to start with any other questions on the channel details, but we were really going to move into the dredge proposal, which is what I was going to be. But then I'm going to add this other piece here, which is the county and Swift Mud Drainage Initiative. So I will ask for your input as far as how would you like to proceed through this? With those 3 things on the table, would you like,
What are we on, number 3? Any
Yes.
follow-up on,
because we're moving into the dredging component.
it could be part of 3 or 4 or 5.
True.
It's all together.
It's all,
Right.
they basically all run together. So maybe it's,
Let's start with the county.
let's
Wanna
start with
start with
county.
county?
Information.
Yeah, because that might change some of our
Yes.
other.
Okay.
All right, so I had an opportunity to talk with Commissioner Mariano, and the general feedback that we have had through just discussions and have had input from folks in the community and such is that the county has projects going on where we could potentially piggyback, partner, and there's some mutual synergies between the dredging initiative and the drainage component. So this map, and I'll try to describe it to Dave online here, is really has to do with the Magnolia Valley flooding issues, the trailer park issues here at Ridge Road and US 19, where there's been, and along Congress, where there's been ongoing drainage issues over the years. So the county has I think it's about a $5 million or more initiative to do this assessment on how they're going to improve this drainage. So what this map describes is a primary outfall from Magnolia Valley to near where the trailer park is off of Congress, and then there's an outfall that goes up to the north, crosses near Walmart and into the Salt Springs State Park as one area, and then there's a southern outfall that goes across US 19 near Siesta Lane basically leverages channels 14, 15, 16, potentially 17 and 18 to kind of enhance that drainage. Now, there's a couple of components here. One is stormwater and the actual drainage that's important. But the other part that Commissioner Mariano is working on that helps kind of on the funding is the cleaning the water aspect. Because when you have storm drainage, you can't just dump it out, or else like you see in the river, you get all this flotsam and jetsam that kind of goes out. So the objective is to slow that water, let it clean itself before you put it into your natural water body. And I believe conceptually that's what we're talking about doing here. So the more outfalls you have, you can slow that water up, do more cleaning with it. So that's where all the channels come in. And so that lake drainage pond that's there off of Quist and Old Post is a core component of the drainage that runs across through Port Richey and down towards Magnolia Valley.
That's an estuary right there, isn't it? Kind of. The one that's just east of Old Post, basically across from the park.
I believe so because it's tidal.
Yeah, I've seen that area, and it looks like it's some marsh in there, so yeah, I think it's already a natural
Right.
estuary, which would filter.
And that's exactly what they're trying to do, and because the water generally flows that way. So this is in essence the bigger thing that's going on. Now, as we know, with the dredging and such, there were these restore funds that came in associated with the dredging. And there have been some discussions, and Commissioner Mariano has had some recent discussions with the mayor of Port Richey on how we can work more cooperatively together and use these funding funds. And they were meeting with the county and stuff. And from what I understand, and don't hold me to them 100%, but the 667,000 that we talked about from the initial restore is coming or is near coming to the city, or they've reached some consensus on that, to Ronnie, your initial point. Mm-hmm. Now, I think the bigger nut that Commissioner Mariano was talking about was, and he gave me a whole rundown on how the restore deal was working initially, and there's 3, I'll just call them tranches, of funds that were available. So this is the tranche 1 that we're dealing with restore. But the tier 2, the second tranche and the third tranche are larger yet. So those have to do with things like stormwater and water cleaning and stuff like that. So he believes that given where this is, there's a real possibility to get even more funding for all of that. So that's kind of where this bigger picture is, that the county's driving to a degree, because they're really at the point to try to get those additional restore funds, because it's managed more at the state's level. And I don't think the feds are involved, but don't hold me to that, but that's what I know. So Jack believes that we could even potentially go so far, and this is where it kind of commingles with the county's priorities. So as I think you know, the county really wants the waterways here coming into Port Richey to be a gateway, if you will, for a lot of things for the county. So one of the things that we've talked about is making sure, like the sandbar near where Sun Cruise is and those things that are not in the dredging as Port Richey has pursued, they're in fact in the federal turning basin area. Jack believes that there's some real possibility to get that cleaned up as well. So not all of these things that I'm talking about, and even from Jack's perspective, are there yet, but they are possibilities because of the people that are involved. There's a lot of attention. Mm-hmm. So his belief is that we need to take advantage of that attention to kind of wrestle in the dollars And they may not all go to where we want, but if we can wrestle the dollars in, the net benefit for the city residents is significant, and the county as well. So that is in kind of a nutshell what we talked about. So there's some additional things. County, and Jack have been working with some entities on the dredging. And as you know, that we have our DMMA site there off of Grand, and that essentially has the materials from Channel 19 in it now. So that explained one of the things on the quoted dredge proposal that we had that I wasn't exactly sure what it meant. And however, what Jack was describing, one of the biggest expenses, and in this case it's the last page, I think it was a little over $100,000 or so, that's the haul off to a Class 1 landfill to get rid of the materials. So one of the things has spoken with Eric Soroyan at Gill Dogs, and there's a possibility that they're having these conversations with engineering groups and stuff and saying, hey, it may be less expensive for you to have a different DMMA site and not have to haul the material as far, because moving tons of material is expensive. So there's an opportunity here, and he gave me some contacts with Sea and Shoreline Aquatic Restoration out of Winter Garden, and some folks that he's been utilizing that has some familiarity with this now. And they'd be maybe receptive to give us some additional input on that, on what those possibilities are, because if that material is good and doesn't have to be hauled off, say at the trailer park, or if there was something else going on where we have clean dredge material, I've got to bring up the foundation of anything I build to such and such height. If that material could be used for that, that forgoes any hauling off of material. So there's another synergy here. So what I'm trying to impart is all of these juggling things that are going on. So let me just take a pause here, and I'll go to Ronnie.
I know back when again, this dredging started years and years ago, we were discussing the possible sites for the dredge material. And what we were told back when was, if the material is on city-owned land, county-owned land, it can be put there, okay? And then you can pay to haul it off, or it can be stored there. When you go to move it to privately owned land, there is still a fee just to put it on per cubic yard, something like that. So that's something we'd have to check into to see, even though you have a citizen that's going to donate his land, they don't want the material going on his land and then turning around and then him selling the material or whatever. There was back when, and I'm going back years ago when this was all started, there was a fee if you put it on private land, so much per ton or yard versus city-owned, county-owned land.
Public land.
Public land, yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things, I'm just going to jump in here real quick,
Go ahead.
Chris. One of the things that I've learned around the dredging process, there's all these little hickey-ups like you're describing that we need to make sure we understand, because one of the things in my conversation with Jack last week is that he did not have the channel information correct in what he was imparting. So I tried to educate him on that to make sure he was consistent. So with that, Chris?
No questions at this point. I mean, it's very intriguing to explore this as a more holistic project, right? Rather than a lot of one-offs.
Right.
That, you end up with a little progress here and a little progress there, as opposed to maybe, 1 + 1 equals something more than just 2. So.
The challenge is when you have more players, it's more complex getting all the players to the table,
Right.
but the benefit can be potentially bigger. But so all of this stuff has been kind of bouncing around out there, but just wanted to make sure that we got it on the table, so at least the three of us were on board, and anybody that's participating, as far as what's out there. And I know from my standpoint, I always believed that the stormwater piece was a critical component of this. And so that's where we are.
Well, in conjunction with what we know are the major problem residential channels, right? If you solve the stormwater problem this way, it fixes those major problems there in 14, 15, and 16.
Correct.
To some
And
extent,
possibly
right?
17 and 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole side off of Old Post.
Yeah.
Well, and there's other things as well here that are a possibility. 24 is a channel that goes north under the bridge there up to
That goes in that estuary.
into the estuary up there,
Yeah.
correct. So there's not currently connectivity in that to the north.
Right.
All right. So one of the things that Jack's having discussions with SwiftMud about is the potential to leverage that space more effectively as well. And that may tie into this northern outfall by Walmart, just to make sure that the waters all flow out there. So,
Yeah, we had talked a while back when they were talking about cleaning up Miller's Bayou water quality, and we had mentioned that, I don't know if an engineer came up with it or it was, but Channel 9 that backs straight in towards, what is that? Not Old Post, Bay Boulevard. Okay? They had come up with putting a culvert underneath it, because then it goes straight out to the estuaries on the other side that go right out to the Gulf, and you would get a flushing of Miller's Bayou. It would come in the river, and it would actually then have another point to flush out on the opposite side, because right now it's just a basin. And so everything comes in, and then it's harder to get everything to flow back out, but if it can flow back out the other side of it,
get some improvement.
yes.
So I think you guys have a good handle on
Right.
kind of some of the things that are out here, but I wanted to share on that. So what we can do is I have some contact information. County is talking to these folks at Sea and Shoreline now. We could also potentially have them come in and talk with us, okay?
Would there be
so-
a possibility for that just to merge into one conversation where they're talking to us and the county at the same time?
Well, we're at ground zero now, so the
Yeah.
thought was, okay, at least do an initial outreach if you guys are agreeable.
Sure.
To kind of see where they are, because this kind of ties into who do we want to coordinate with at the county, which is one of our subjects. So Mike Carbala, who's in public infrastructure, has really got point and county for the Magnolia Valley drainage component. So he's a natural outreach. I have not met Dan Biles at the county administrator yet. And then there's Nectarios Pitos cares for the harbors planning initiative. So those were the players at the county, certainly in addition to Jack, that are folks that I can think of that I've had some dealings with, at least with their departments, to know that they could be something to coordinate with and maybe figure things out. Other thoughts on that front?
No.
So that's where I was looking with these folks from Sea and Shore, since they're working with Carbala, maybe figure out how we can do something, but make sure we don't step on toes and we do
Right.
it smartly.
I would think that it'd be easier to work with the county instead of them meeting with the engineering group and then us meeting with the engineering group. Why not, if we're working on the same project, all meet together?
Right.
I'm trying to intersect there.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thought, but not there yet, near as I can tell. So, and then the other area is SwiftMud. Jack has been working with Brian Armstrong, who's the director up there. But there are folks like Jeanette Seacrest. She does the resource management area. I think she's probably the key one. At least I've had conversation with folks in their department regarding stormwater. So that's the other area, at least at the state level. And then FDEP, at least locally, really oversees the permits, not necessarily so much the how do you want to do it. I think that really falls to SwiftMud and some of the lines of control. But we've got contacts through our permit, through Mary Jurgen and stuff, who is really at the Tampa. And so depending on what we have, those are the players near as I can tell based on what I've looked at. And I just wanted to see how we intersect with that and be a complement rather than a distraction.
Well, the way I see it is because these are all canals in Port Richey that they want to connect to, we have to be involved.
Right.
And if they have meetings without us, how are we going to know what's going on? So we just need to let them know that we would like to help out and be involved in this from the very beginning.
Agreed.
Okay. I think we're in incredible agreement on that one.
Yes. Okay.
Just so we can, I don't see how it'll be productive if it's not.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so I think we've talked about the partnering resources, we've talked about the Florida resources, partnering resources. The dredge proposal, which was what we had kind of tabled previously, do you guys want to go through that in more detail to something we've talked about? I learned a little bit, maybe, on, as I was looking at the numbers, trying to make heads or tails of it, because we only have 4 lines associated with each of the phases. But the mobilization and demobilization is really the work. So there's...
Better than set up and take down, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the part that was intriguing to me was the staking part, the PVC staking. I think I want that job. If I'm making 10 grand for that one, I think that's got the best margins associated with
Right.
it.
Well, that was one of my, when we talked about for safety, pulling those rebars out, I said, wouldn't it be easier to mark them because we've already paid 10 grand and they're there. Some of them are still there.
Yeah.
Just mark them. You know, we already paid for it. Why pull them out for them to put them back in again?
Right. So the part that I was looking, we've got I'm just looking at attachment A in the bid, and there's the dredge material is like $40 a yard there, and then so that's the dredging component, and then the haul off is about $10 per yard. That's the disposal piece that's on page 6 of 6. And that mobilization and demobilization where we were talking conceptually can combine, it's really that setup for that canal. So when you go canal here and then you move over to that next one, all the trappings associated with that. I don't necessarily understand that because with a hydraulic dredge, I can see that a little bit more than I can with a mechanical dredge, but we don't have any of those details to understand it, but it's certainly a question. But
So you're telling me that is per canal?
yes, so when you go to that canal and you get all of your stuff there, so you've moved from one canal to go to the next one, your booms, all the stuff that you have to have, all your manatee signs, and I'm assuming, I'm being a little facetious here, but all of those things are what's associated with that mobilization and demobilization.
It would just seem if you were doing 26A and 1, 18 and 17, it would just be up and around.
Well,
right?
yeah, I'm looking at channel 14, 15, and 16
Yeah. Just come out of the end of one
to
and go right
charge
down into the next.
that fee for moving from 100, 200 feet over from one to another and going up the canal, I just can't see that.
Well, in fairness, those aren't on this
Yeah.
estimate.
No,
right? So
but I
don't know
think-
what they would say about those.
To
Yeah.
Ronnie's
But,
point,
yeah, it
if
should
you were
be.
doing those, what do you have to do on it?
Right.
So I think the rub that I have, this is pretty thin. There's 6 pages for, this size. Where's the other details? Because the only details that I really picked up was the haul off to the class 1, which we know is $10 a pop. And the other thing that I found interesting in here was it was really only a 3-month project. But the cost of going to a class 1 is pricey.
Right.
And that's one of the things that Jack was talking about, we might be able to forgo if we can come up with something else. So,
All right.
And how much of this is a puzzle piece of the broader project? Right, I guess, and it's more a rhetorical question than it is necessarily something I
since
think we have an
this,
answer for.
this bid is, to my understanding, no longer in effect,
Right.
it'd have to be rebid. I purely looked at it as I knew it was there. I wanted to at least be able to roll those numbers against something for that spreadsheet exercise, just so we had some Kentucky windage on what could this potentially cost if that's the kind of quotes we're getting.
Right.
So-
So this was the 118 in 26A,
Right.
Correct.
which on one, that goes back to that area looking at this alternative outfall project. When you look at those, wasn't that where they possibly could fall under the federal side? Because those are navigational, that's a navigational channel.
For one,
1 in 26A.
I don't know if it could fall on the federal side. Jack's thought there might be some connects there, but I have yet to see them in my mind.
Because I know those are, part of it is in front of the shrimp boats, and then the rest of it goes into Miller's Bayou.
Right.
But for the shrimp boats, that's commercial.
Right.
So doesn't that fall in the same jurisdiction as the river navigational channel used for commercial too? Because those shrimp boats are paying the state a fee
Right.
to be able to moorn there. So therefore, you would think that that fee would be tied into making sure that channel is available for the commercial shrimpers.
Editorial comment. The turning basin really ends there at, right there in front of Hooters. I believe it's 17.
Right.
No, that's not right. It's
No, not 17.
37, maybe?
No.
What's
It's
the
all-
green, what's the green marker that's lit right there?
Oh,
That-
the one at the corner?
Yeah, that's the turning basin.
Right.
The Fed stops there.
There. Yeah.
So they don't consider going towards all the shrimpers, going towards Hooters
Now,
as part of the channel, like a
the federally
navigational
managed channel.
channel.
I've got a survey information from Army Corps, and it only shows to the turning basin. It really doesn't even extend upriver to the bridge. There's another mark there where the gambling boat used to moor. I think that's the extent. So that's all they survey. And so I think they're one and the same. I'm a little bit guessing here to a degree, but that's what my take is from my conversations with them.
Interesting, because we're going to have 2 commercial marinas upriver of that turning basin. It's,
Yes.
in short order.
Right, right. Now, I think with more traffic, I think this is where, at least I thought, there would be other funding for that kind of stuff for recreational boaters at the Fed level that, near as I can tell from any conversations I've had, have not even been looked at. So I think by having some commercial operations like the Shrimpers Inn and stuff upriver, because we do have the rental companies and stuff that are commercial.
Oh, that's three now, right? 'Cause
Right.
there's the rental company, there's the marina before the bridge,
Correct.
and then the marina on the backside.
Correct. So I'm thinking that I would really think there's another pool of funding that we
Right.
could get for some of those things. If it's,
And maybe Jack can help us with that, but my point is that I know you're paying a submerged land lease fee as a commercial, as the shrimpers, to mourn there,
right,
but yet they're not gonna dredge the channel out in front of you.
and this is the part that I really want to figure out, because the whole, let's get this all together rather than
Right.
piecemealing it is what my thinking is.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I
All
think
right.
we're 100% in agreement
Okay.
on that concept.
Well, I always love that part when that happens. All right, is there anything else associated with the channels or around dredging that we'd want to talk about this evening?
Not for me.
No.
Okay, because it's 8 o'clock, I just want to check everybody's
Right.
timing. If we're at a reasonable break point, then I would say we look at potentially adjourning, but before we do that, I just want to see if, Dave, is there anything else from your end after listening, if you're still out there? No?
No, yeah, you guys did a good job. I appreciate you allowing me to.
Well, hopefully we can get you in here. We'll keep working with Sal and figuring out when we can do that.
That's fine. I'd like to participate.
Okay. Well, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the meeting for the 2nd of June is